Hey guys, it's Sarah from Just My Typewriter, and welcome to my dining room floor. So if you watch some of my more recent videos, you'll know that I moved kind of recently with a lot of my typewriters, 30 of them in fact. And one of the things I wanted for my new home was a place to film videos, but also display my collection, because I've never displayed my typewriters anywhere before. I get asked on Instagram all the time, how do you display your typewriters? And the truth is I just never have. In fact, this is what my previous setup looked like.
So this is kind of embarrassing, but this is, because it's just a mess, but this is where I store all of my typewriters at the moment. And as you can see, it is really not well organized. I had displayed a ton of these up here. I had, all of my big standard typewriters up here. And over time, I've just collected other stuff that I needed out of the way.
So in my new place, I needed a place to display these typewriters, and the first problem I had to kind of figure out was what will hold that many typewriters. One of the biggest hurdles I ran into as I was trying to find a way to display these machines was what's sturdy enough to hold 30 typewriters. And realistically, I'm not going to put all of them in the same place. That is just asking for a hazard and an emergency situation, which might ruin my security deposit. So I wanted something that could store a few typewriters, and I landed on the idea of a bookshelf. Now, I looked far and wide for a good, solid, sturdy wooden bookshelf, and I just couldn't find anything that I really liked that I could also move and transport in the back of a U-Haul. So I went to antique stores, I looked at Facebook Marketplace, and the other problem I ran into was I needed something sturdy enough to hold a lot of weight, but also that was deep enough to hold a typewriter. A lot of typewriters are over 12 inches deep, and a lot of the bookshelves I was looking at are not that deep because they're not designed to hold an entire collection of antique typewriters, because no one has an entire collection of antique typewriters. I know a lot of other collectors use IKEA shelves, and I've never been to an IKEA because they don't exist where I live. So I didn't have an opportunity to get an IKEA shelf. What I landed on was actually this bookshelf that I found on Facebook Marketplace that I had to drive an hour to go get and then take apart manually with my own tools and then transport back home to then put on a U-Haul truck to then transport here and rebuild in this space. So in the end, I'm not stoked about it. I don't think it's probably sturdy enough to hold as many typewriters as I would like it to, but this is the bookcase that I would like to have hold some of my typewriters, and I think the rest of them I'm actually going to take to my office as a secondary display location. So that's one way to display your typewriters, finding a place where you may work that has a built-in bookshelf. If you have one of those in your home and it's already sturdy enough to hold the typewriters, that's a really great option as just a way to display typewriters, and it also kind of makes them a conversations piece, especially if you're taking them somewhere outside of your home and sharing them with other people, which is why I wanted to put them in my office. Now, for displaying typewriters in my home, I was kind of inspired by a few of my favorite YouTubers. I was thinking about Hope Scope, who does fitness and legging reviews, and I was also thinking about Simply Nailogical and Janixa of Nail Lacquer Therapy, who both collect and swatch nail polish. They have their collections on display behind them in almost all of their videos, and I really love the look of that. I think it's a really fun way to keep every video themed, have a set that you don't have to tear down every time. So as I was thinking about making videos in my new home for this YouTube channel, I wanted kind of a permanent display that I could have set up one time and then use to film all of my videos that also displayed my typewriters behind me. So I decided to use my dining room because I eat most of my meals on the couch or in the bathtub, and I don't really need a dining room, but I do need a filming location. So welcome to the Just My Typewriter set. So in addition to displaying typewriters, I have an emotional attachment to inanimate objects. It's just a problem that I have. I have talked about this briefly in my moving video. I like to collect just things that speak to me emotionally. I save every scrap of paper. I've saved every movie ticket, every report card, every note someone has sent to me, every pen pal letter. I just save everything because it means so much to me. But one of the problems that I have when doing that is that I have no way to display those items. They mean so much to me, but no one ever sees them, and I never see them. I put them in a cardboard box, I tape up the cardboard box to protect said object, and then I put the cardboard box in a closet and never see it again. So I wanted to find a way to kind of integrate some of the items I've been collecting over the years that mean a lot to me emotionally in a way that displays them so that I can remember them and have access to them and just display them and appreciate them more than putting them in a box in my closet. So I wanted to go through some of the items that I will be displaying on this typewriter shelf along with some of my typewriters, and then take you through my shelf decorating process. I don't know what I'm gonna do yet, but we'll find out together. This is for a future project. I need to hide it. Ignore my fridge. It's just gonna run, and you're just gonna have to deal with it. So I want to start here in the lower quadrant. Now, one of the things I was advised to do was not put the typewriters in the middle section because they're just not as sturdy as the other sections. So I do think I want to start from the bottom and go up, and maybe put some of my typewriters here toward the bottom, and then also include some of the books that I've collected over the years that are typewriter themed. So these are some of the items that I've saved and have collected over the years. This first one is a bowl that my grandfather made. He is a wood turner and he uses a lathe to make bowls and pens and plates and things. So I have this one that he made and I really liked it. I think it matches my apartment aesthetic. So I thought this would be a fun thing to display, as well as this adorable little wooden box. This was made by a woodworker. I have just bookmarks in it right now. But this was made by a woodworker who made harps. I used to play the Celtic harp, fun fact. And when I bought my Celtic harp from him, he also gave me this box that he made because he was also a woodworker. I really like the tones of wood that are here, and I like that these two items can kind of go together. They're both wood tone, and I thought they'd be nice to display on there, but they're also good to hide things in because, again, I'm a pack rat. So this teacup has survived quite the journey. This teacup was gifted to me by my friend Emma, Lychee Pink Planner, who sent me my Barbie typewriters. She actually sent me a whole little gift basket along with my first Barbie typewriter that included snacks and tea, because I love tea, and she included this adorable little porcelain china teacup and saucer. So it was shipped from England, and then it went to live in my apartment when I was going to grad school. And then I took it home with me to my parents' house, and then I moved it here. And somehow it survived. And I'd love to be able to display it and look at it here on my shelf. So another thing I talked about in my moving video was I wanted to buy cool items to decorate my apartment that I also thought were useful and vintage themed. So I did buy this little Japanese porcelain cat that is a desk organizer. You could put a wet sponge in the front to lick your stamps. You could put a pen in its tail area, but what I really liked it for was the spring in the middle to display postcards. I have gotten into the habit of, instead of buying items when I go on vacation, I buy postcards. They're a lot easier to pack, a lot easier to save, and I have a saving problem. But I have collected these postcards over the years. Anytime I travel for anything, I pick up a postcard. So I thought this was a really cool way to kind of display that growing collection that I have. Speaking of postcards, so for a very long time when I was an undergrad at my previous school, I actually worked for a poetry publishing company called Red Flag Poetry. Every month they put out a postcard that featured a poem that was submitted to them and a piece of artwork. They also published chapbooks, and I was really involved as the art director with them for a couple of years. I helped select all of the artwork that went on the front of their postcards, and I did a lot of their book covers as well. It was a really fun group, and I highly encourage you to actually go and subscribe to that project, because every month you could get a really cool postcard in the mail that features a poem and a piece of artwork on the front. So I will link them down below. But I worked for them for a really long time, and over the years I just collected a bunch of the postcards that I did as the art director. And one of the postcards that I was really proud of was this postcard that we had done for, I think it was Halloween, but my sister's best friend growing up was an artist, and she did sculptures and paintings and things. So I asked her to do a piece of artwork for one of our postcards. So she painted this on a wood board and then sent it to me, and we scanned it in and put it on a postcard, but I have the original painting that was on that postcard, and it's a black cat eye. But I just think that is so cool, and I've saved it for years and years, and I just really want to be able to display this along with all my postcards from Red Flag Poetry. Let's take a brief moment to do a quick Q&A. So this is something I like to do on my Instagram over at just.my.typewriter. I like to do a Q&A once a week where I ask you guys to ask me anything, and sometimes I get some cool questions and sometimes I get some weird ones. So let's answer a couple of questions you guys have asked me on Instagram. So one person asked me, do you have a white whale typewriter you'd love to have one day? So for a long time, my answer was a Barbie typewriter, but now I have, you know, a lot of those. But it's always kind of my dream to find one in the wild. All of the Barbie typewriters I've gotten have been from other people in England and other countries. So I'd love to be able to find one just at a yard sale for $5. That would be probably my white whale to find in the wild. It's kind of the thing I love the most. Which is your favorite for each activity? Journaling, crafting, letter writing, etc. Go. So this question is tough because it changes every day. There are some typewriters I like for other things. There's some typewriters I like for letter writing or crafts. So it really depends on what's in front of me at the time. For letter writing, I do like to rotate between my machines just so each one of them gets a little bit of love. But I've really been loving writing letters on my Adler J3, which is a more recent typewriter in my collection. I just really enjoy that typewriter. I love writing letters on it because I can go for forever. When it comes to crafting, I'm looking for something that actually has a little bit of a bigger paper tray to it, and that I can manipulate the platen and the line spacing retainer a lot. So I really like using my Underwood 6, which is a standard machine for that. I also like using my pacemaker. It makes it easier to roll through harder to type on surfaces like fabric and cardstock and coffee liners. What are your 3 top typewriter cleaning tools, the essentials for getting it sparkly? Well, so this depends on the machine as well. I think everybody probably knows my process by now is I air compress the thing, I clean out the internals with mineral spirits, and then I usually use Simple Green on the exterior. Now that totally depends on the finish of the machine, but my top 3 tricks for getting a typewriter to look really nice and sparkly is definitely to air it out with some sort of compressed air. You can get keyboard cleaner in compressed air cans, and that works just as well. A little less PSI, but it'll still work for you. I've heard people use leaf blowers, vacuums, hair dryers, something that forces air out, and it kind of dusts out the machine for you. So that's my number 1 tip. The other thing I would suggest is to use some sort of solvent on the inside. I know some people use some sort of like lighter fluid material. I use mineral spirits on the inside of my machines, never on the outside, always on the inside, and that cleans out any residue that you might have in there from age or from ink over the years. That gets the type slugs nice and sparkly, and it also frees up the type basket, so your machine's going to type better over time. And then for the exterior, I've used Simple Green a lot on the 1950s machines, and post that. Anything that's plastic, Simple Green works really well on. Crinkle paint finish surfaces, Simple Green works really well on. But for machines that are a little bit older, 1930s and below, I've found that I actually use WD-40 on the outside to make it really nice and shiny, not Simple Green. Simple Green can actually mess up the enamel finish on some of those older machines. So in those cases, I do use WD-40 on the outside of the machine, not the inside, on the outside of the machine, to get it nice and sparkly. Here's one that I get often. In addition to how do you display your typewriters, I often get asked about how do you use your typewriters, or I have a typewriter and what should I use it for? There's a lot of different answers for this and a lot of different ideas that you can have as you're looking at using your typewriter. I know people who get a typewriter might be intimidated. Well, how do I use it for something like writing? If I'm not a writer, what do I use it for? I've personally found I use typewriters a lot for writing poetry. I am not a poet, but something about sitting in front of a typewriter makes me feel poetic. I know some people just use them to write lists. So if you're writing your grocery list, instead of putting it on your phone every week, you could type it out on your typewriter and have a physical typewritten list that you can use. I use lists for all kinds of things. So other organizational tactics you could use. Even typing out somebody a birthday card once a year is a really great use for your typewriter. I've used them for crafting as well. My mom was really into scrapbooking, and I'm also kind of, because I'm a paper hoarder, I've turned into a bit of a scrapbooker, and you can also use typewriters for that and use them to make labels in your scrapbook or jot down memories. You can also try journaling, and this is something I'm going to try at some point, is forcing myself to sit down and typewrite a page every day on a machine. I think that would be a really great way to utilize your typewriter, even if it's just jotting down what you did that day. Some form of like journaling would be a really great way to use your typewriter if you're not a writer and you don't know what to do with your typewriters, because I'm not a writer and that's what I use mine for. I think my work here is done. So as I was putting this up, I was thinking about a couple factors. Number one being the weight of the machines. So if you're doing this in your home, make sure you've got a sturdy enough bookshelf to kind of do something like this. I also distributed the typewriters across the shelf, so not all the typewriters were in a column, putting all the weight on one side. And some of these cases are also empty to help kind of distribute that weight a little bit across the shelf. If you're interested in more typewriter content, I do have some other videos on this YouTube channel, and I also have an Instagram at just.my.typewriter. I want to thank you all so much for watching today and remind you that you're just my typewriter.